I had spent over 2 weeks at Copperwater Cave, and it was good to be home. The clear of the morning air was sullied by the realisation that in all that time away, the only things that had grown on the farm was some sugarcane and a handful of pumpkins. Incredulous, I was wary of foul play. The local hills were home to scores of cows, sheep, pigs and chickens, as well as a few llamas. For the vast numbers of fauna in the area, there was ample amounts of uneaten grass. Surely they hadn't been helping themselves to the crops. I wanted to catch them in the act, but when the animals had seen me arrive back, they had run off towards the dirty slopes. What I really needed was some sort of sentry around here, a bit like the iron golems that patrolled the villages. I had rationed my way through to the very last of my prepared food whilst away, and despite the actions of the local thieves, I was more than able to whip something up from what I had. I carelessly trundled around, and after saying good morning to Fish, I was shocked into readiness when I found an Enderman waiting for me. I wanted to run, but I couldn't leave Fish alone. And anyway, this was my kitchen. For a time, the creature just looked at me with its entrancing purple eyes, which felt rude considering I couldn't look back. Soon I realised that they weren't going to hurt me. And then I thought that I wasn't going to let anything else get in the way of me and my breakfast. I bustled past the Enderman, but as I got close, my vision distorted, and for a fraction of a second, I saw a visage of a castle on a cliffside. More than that, I felt emotions. No, the Enderman had made me feel that. I felt the feeling of home. Was that where it had come from? If this was a way for the Enderman to communicate with me, I had no way of communicating back. Trying not to be distracted by the looming figure, I busied myself with wheat, eggs, sugar, and the Enderman seized my mind's eye once again to show me that they were guest. Shaking my head free of the images and beginning to feel like this guest was beginning to outstay their welcome, I focused on my task. The Enderman left me alone for a moment, but as I peered up from what I was doing, incredulity gripped me for the second time that morning. Get away from Fish! Neither guest nor Fish seemed bothered by my outcry. I finished preparing the bread and almost fell back as the Enderman zoomed right next to me, and I felt the warm, comforting feeling of home-cooked food, before being dropped back into my state of hunger and bubbling annoyance. Huffing, I said out loud that they could take whatever they liked, and without waiting to see if the message had gotten across, I stomped up the kitchen stairs. Nellie had to pretend like I wasn't in a bad mood as we sat down to craft. But as usual, it didn't take long before she cheered me up. I read Nellie's pages like I was browsing a menu at a restaurant, except this restaurant had quite a few things out of stock. There was a recipe for a clock, but I didn't have any gold, unsurprisingly. I could make flint and steel, presumably to make fire, but I left the gravel I'd found at Copperwater Cave in the boat. I'd love to make some candles, but I didn't know how I could attain any beeswax. Rather than let myself be downtrodden, I viewed the missing ingredients as things to collect in upcoming adventures. I did have all the ingredients to make a compass, which I was sorely in need of. From that, Nellie showed me how to make a map, which I also made immediately. It was then that I discovered that, like Nellie's pages, the map had magical properties. When I held up the map to read it for the first time, colour ran across it and formed an image of the local area. I could see my farm. In the top left of the map, there was a small unfinished patch. My limited storage space was overflowing, and as I crafted, I had to run around to fetch ingredients from various chests. I had resorted to storing minerals in the tool chest, monster loot in the farmhouse, and even though it was in the kitchen, I hoped there was a more appropriate place to store the edible fish that wasn't right next to Fish. It seemed Fish wasn't concerned, as every time I came back to the kitchen, Guest was occupying her. What were those two talking about? I busied myself all through the night and finished my toils as the sun rose by making some TNT. As Nellie had previously suggested, I put the remainder of the sand in the furnace to make glass, also adding the leftover clay and copper ore as to not waste the coal. Perhaps being attracted by the TNT, I was left juggling the contents of the furnace as I fought off a lurking creeper that was probing the bunker for weak spots, of which there were a few. I was still wary of the chasm beneath my home. The steep sides of the crevice would make illuminating it difficult, especially whilst fighting off monsters. That didn't mean I wasn't insatiably curious and had an idea to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I dug down through the bunker towards the chasm to make a basement for storage and a place to put some choice workstations Nellie was tempting me with. Without pushing my luck, I dug deeper than was needed for the simple room. Unfortunately, interior design was limited as I wanted to use oak wood, of which I had none. As I dug into the night, I was interrupted by a familiar sound that was becoming all too common. I stopped what I was doing at the merchant's hails and greeted the invisible figure. His offer to sell me an oak sapling for 5 emeralds was non-negotiable. That taunted me into declaring that I would source the wood myself, which may have been what he wanted. The last time we had met, he had guilted me into a sense of duty to engage more with the surrounding communities. I wanted to further discuss about the plights of the villagers with him, for I didn't know many specifics about the situation. But the night was perilous, and in the morning he was gone. I was used to the merchant's cheek and had just about held off begrudging him when I spotted that he'd used my home as a spot to tether his llamas without asking. The stupid creatures were bathing in my irrigation system, and I had no idea when he'd be back. That could be his problem. As I dug out the basement, matching the floor plan of my bunker above, I emerged through the side of the cliff. The view was breathtaking, and I amended the room's design to accommodate. I would now need a hefty amount of glass as well as oak. For now, the room could serve its purpose, and I was excited to place a cartography table there. That began a small obsession into map making, as I discovered the table could be used to enchant the maps into covering larger areas. The maps set themselves strict borders, and I tried to tease out the nature of the magic that guided it. After using all the paper my sugarcane allowed, I set out of the house with my nose in the magical pieces of parchment. As I explored, the map filled itself with the area around me, and I was captivated. I barely looked up as I strolled through the grumpy village, and it was my turn to be rude when I dismissed their offer to sell me an enchanted sword. I should have at least shown some respect for their craftsmanship. On the way back, I stopped off to gather some more eggs from the wild chickens on the dirty slopes. I still had some produce on me from the morning, and the animals flocked towards me. They wouldn't leave me alone. It was then that I remembered my earlier suspicions that, in my head, were all but confirmed as the herd followed me home. I tried to shoo them away, but it was the TNT that did the trick for now. I'd used it to make a small hollow in the side of my hill, but the explosive proved just as ineffective as my plan to distract the animals. Still, I learnt some of the basics of redstone from Nellie. With all my recent petty grievances, it felt good to set off again and get some space. Before leaving, I had enough sugarcane to work at the cartography table once more, and found I'd pushed it to its limit with the biggest map of my home that I could make. The uncharted areas mainly stretched out to sea, which is exactly where I'm sure I could find some sand. Of the islands to pick from, I spotted one that also had a dense collection of trees. I carved a little cove for my boat and named this place Oak Island. I spent a few days there gathering wood. One morning, I saw a skeleton that was running away. This was a new behaviour to me, and I investigated to find it was being chased by a wolf. The wolf didn't seem hostile to me, and accepted the bone of the felled skeleton when I offered it to him. I had all the bone I could need, and so gave him another. With that, the animal seemed immensely grateful. As I spent some time gathering coal on the rocky part of the island, I noticed he was following me, even when I went a short ways underground. I was charmed by his eagerness and welcomed the companionship as I dug out the sand I was looking for. The next morning, I found that the wolf had slept in my boat. With another half day of gathering ahead, I let him sleep. To my surprise, he was there when I returned. and despite my strong suggestions, he wouldn't get out. I don't think he wanted me to leave. In the end, I had to make another boat, but as I walked around with my arms full, he occupied that one as well. Having lost this battle of wills, it looked like I was going to have to leave some things behind. On the sail back to Fool's Landing, the sea air whipped through my hair and Two Bones' fur. His hot breath on my neck reminded me of all the friends I had met recently. And now that I had a moment to think, I hoped I hadn't upset anyone with my impatience. But nobody's perfect, and, hopefully, soon I would have a chance to make it up. So it was episode 5 that Fool finally survived a full episode, although it would have been pretty tragic if he hadn't have managed to get through this one, because it was pretty tame. Let's see, in the crafting section, I don't know why I thought it was beeswax and not honeycomb. I mean, it's beeswax, it's probably not even the game, is it? Let's see, another Fool the Fool moment. Fool the Fool. Those pumpkins right next to home. I carried on forgetting about them. They literally could have circumvented 3 storylines, I think. But there we go. And yeah, thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I hope you all enjoyed.